Hello there, Iryna. Okay, well done with the edit. Okay, perhaps I should have suggested it for task 1 as well. I didn't look at task 1. However, I'm not going to send it back again. That would be crazy. Alright, let's go. So the issue of traditional education has grown in importance since it was established over 100 years ago. The old system was designed for the purpose of sorting and selecting, and for meeting national standards. Good. Now we see an unchanged system and realize that it may be time for an alternative one. Full stop. Okay, and I'm just trying to get it reducing the word count. Okay, and trying to avoid repetition as well, where it's not essential. Okay. On the one hand, the current traditional schools offer a core curriculum of maths, English, science, and social studies. Now, out of all of those, you only need to capitalize English because it's a proper noun. Okay. The rest can be lowercase. Let's just see. But good list there. Let's just see. There's another thing there. No. Okay. There's some electives. Okay, electives in high schools. Good. Many children, because it sounds more formal than kids, who are in traditional schools can be disengaged. Okay, never use contractions. This is a formal essay, so never use contractions. Let's see. Many children in traditional schools are often disengaged. Full stop. This is due to the fact that the system in which we expect and demand all students to meet standards, blah, 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 blah. I don't really follow this now, okay, because it's a long sentence. I would have just gone for simplicity, really, okay, because we're not going to get points for the quality of the idea. We're only going to get points for the delivery of the idea. So the idea can be basic as anything. And I try and instruct students to write basic arguments because they're just easier to write and there's less chance of tripping up regarding the grammar. So let's go. This is due to the fact that the system in which we expect and demand all students to meet standards can be characterized as essentially a slave-master relationship. Wow. Okay, let's just see. For example, due to the latest research, Americans have not made much progress academically over the past 50 years. Therefore, this is a massive jump. It was way too strong. Okay, and it wasn't backed up that much. Okay, if you'd have said something like, for example, recent research showed that students with dominant tutors rarely developed the ability of free thinking for themselves. Something like that. Okay, then it's closer to slave master. All right, but they haven't made much progress. Is not really related to slaves and masters. Okay, therefore students are prisoners of the classroom and experiences of education that they had for many years before. Okay, Iryna, look, you've got fantastic English ability, okay, and your grammar's really good and your vocabulary is really good, but what's really hurting me is that I'm seeing you, I don't know if you would be able to score that well because we're going overcomplicated. Okay, go for shorter sentences that are a little bit simpler. Go for simpler ideas. Okay, and then pick up your points in your vocabulary and your grammar structures. Okay, but remember, there's no points for quality ideas. There's only points for quality delivery. All right. On the other hand, opposite the traditional schools, we have alternative schools around the world. Let's just say, on the other hand, alternative schools in which young people have the freedom to organize their daily activities is what? There's no like finishing the thought there. Let's see. In which they're making young people, okay, organize their daily activities develops young people into adults, possibly. Okay, we don't have to go into all this other stuff. For instance, regarding the top rank education systems in the world, on the top rank, no. For instance, Finland is most commonly ranked as one of the best educational systems in the world. This country has a short school day, rich with extracurricular activities, because Finns believe it is important, the learning that happens outside the classroom, full stop. Furthermore, a third of the classes taken are electives, or furthermore, a third of the classes that students take in the high school are electives. Thus, the literacy rate in this country is 100%. I can't see how that argument is linked to the literacy rate. In fact, it goes against the literacy rate argument, because if they're outside, okay, so if we'd have just said something like, thus, free time and modern systems of education clearly push countries to the best limits in world rankings, and then it just relates back to the example and the case that you were making beforehand. Okay, to conclude, from the examples and arguments given, I am strongly of the opinion that we have to bring reformation, that we have to reform and implement necessary changes to our system of education. Okay, good work there, Iryna, good work, but what we need to do is just really simplify it, and so we're not getting, so there's no confusion for the examiner more than anything. And he should just be able to flow through it. Okay, he or she should just be able to flow through it beginning to end. Okay, so my advice is limit the arguments, make them a little bit more basic, okay, and just go for clarity. Alright, let's go. Pie chart. The pie charts illustrate the amount of money spent by the pie charts illustrate expenses by 3 councils, Yorkshire, Derbyshire and Lancashire, in the year 2014. Okay, what I'm trying to do there is just go for brevity again. Alright, it is evident from the chart that education represents the largest portion, comma, whereas social services, community care and environment are undoubtedly the smallest portions, full stop. Okay, this would be your overall sentence, and I would have put it at the end, okay, because that's just your general overview. Look, delete that. Okay, let's see. In Yorkshire, about 50% of all money was spent on education and community care, and the other 50% was shared between leisure, social services and other. Good. Regarding Derbyshire, there were expenses on leisure totaled 35% of the whole amount. Then the education sector took almost a quarter of all the money, and only social services received the smallest, approximately 10 to 15%. Okay, and the rest, including social services, received approximately between 10 and 15%. Okay, good work, good work. I would have done some more comparisons, I'd have talked about the education in Derbyshire, the education section in Derbyshire, and the education section in Lancashire, whereas in Lancashire it was considerably lower at 20%, blah blah blah. Okay, let's have a look. Lancashire followed a similar pattern to the Yorkshire region. Okay, comma, being 2 larger sections and 4 smaller categories, but that's a little bit too vague. I'm pretty certain this is over the word limit as well. Overall, it is clear to see that education accounted for the majority of the regions as a major expenditure. Good. While the rest of the programs accounted for minority expenses in the mentioned regions. Excellent work there, Iryna. Very good. We just need to get into the habit of editing it down and reducing the actual words. Okay? Because if what happens is the examiner stops correcting it at the stated limit plus 10%. So in this case it's roughly 165. Okay, so it won't count like the summary there, or in the last one it wouldn't have counted the conclusion. Okay, so now what I want you to do is implement all the corrections that you've heard, send them back to me, okay, and then send me your 2 new essays. All right, good work. No, I think that was the last essay, wasn't it? It was. So okay, I would love for you to continue. Okay, I think we've still got some work to do. So have a look at those links. It's a special deal. All right, and hopefully we'll carry on working, improving, and we'll get there eventually. All the best.